Welcome to the Celebration of You. I'm your host, Holly Dowling. I'm thrilled to share with you incredible people from all over the world who are living and leading extraordinary lives. From overcoming immense adversity to discovering the secret sauce to leading with courage and grace. Their stories are going to bring you hope and inspiration. Now, let the stories begin. Today is a very, very special day for me because I feel like the person that you're going to have the privilege, the honor, the joy, and the delight in hearing from is somebody that has come into my life, and we'll talk about how we've met, who's exquisite. So I have listeners all over the world, and I'm just going to ask you, I know people, I just want to thank all the listeners before I introduce you, because you'll soon know that this person is sitting halfway across the world right now. And I want to thank all of the listeners around the world who are diligently listening to this show. And what I'm loving is the messages that I'm getting, either from my guests or from other people who you have sent. We have families in the Ukraine. We have people in Australia. We have the UK. We have Moscow. We have people that are sitting there religiously listening to this show because you never know whose life is going to be changed. So today, long intro to get to this amazing human being that I feel gifted to have in my life. Everybody get ready. If you're running, you might want to pause because you're going to be graced by the presence of RolCof, and RolCof is sitting in Barcelona, and you sound like you're on my couch next to me. Hi.
I am. How are you? How are you, Holly? I am sitting on your couch next to you. I feel very close. The energy is very good. I even have goosebumps, to be honest.
Oh, don't do the goosebumps, because you know what, RolCof, you know when we do that, that's my thing, right? When I get the goosies, I know it's a really good thing getting ready to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, so tell me, you're sitting in Barcelona. Like, what time is it there right now?
Right now, it's 4:36 p.m.
Okay.
In the afternoon. It was nice and sunny. It was a hot day today.
And seriously? Okay, what's hot? Because you know where I sit, in Arizona, dear.
If I calculate it into Fahrenheit, it's probably around 90, 92. Of course, it's not the same as Arizona. Arizona has very dry heat, which I like, but this has a little bit more humidity. And it's very comfortable in terms of being, out on the balcony if there's a breeze. But when you're walking outside or doing exercises, it's a little warm.
Well, and the only thing I'm going to give you a little bit of grace for is the humidity, because I do have to say, living in the dry, we love it. But can I just tell you, this week it's been in the upwards of 117. So dry or not, it is not happy times.
No, not at all. No. I'm a cool weather guy, though. So yeah. I prefer cool weather.
Well, and when we met, it was when you were living in Chicago. So we'll get to that. I have to brag on you. I have to brag on you, RolCof, because people that are listening right now can just hear your voice. You have this gorgeous, exquisite, masculine grace in your voice. And so it just goes to lend that what you're about to find out is this gentleman is a renowned musician, artist, has a voice that's off the charts. I'm thinking about all the incredible things you've done, but I mean, going back to when you were 19, you were running an agency, and then you've worked with all kinds of Grammy producers. Tell us a little bit about your passion and your background in the music industry, RolCof. I want to hear you brag.
I was fortunate enough, and I don't like to brag.
I know you don't. I was
fortunate enough to, in some parts of my life, taught how to play the piano and read music. And at the age of 16, I was living in the South, and I decided to take a trip to Chicago. Was accepted into, you had to go in and play the piano or sing or do whatever it was that they wanted you to do to get into the school, because I lived outside the district. And it was a performing arts school, and they were on the cups of fame. So they were changing these huge schools around the country into performing arts schools. So I was accepted on the premise that I maintained a certain average, and the fact that I had to take 2 extra classes that others did not per day, and that had to be a music or an art class or dance. And so I chose piano because I wanted to continue learning more about that, and advanced choir and normal choir. And I went to school from there. I graduated and went into the business world at the age of 19. I walked into a place that actually hires or sends you out as a temp or a permanent placement. And they had a position open, first as an administration assistant, and then with my skills, because I'd taken some computer classes, data processing while I was in school, high school. And they just started using computers and stuff, and I was allowed to get on that and work with them. And from there, I became the administrator of the top agency in the Midwest, run by Jim Singer, who was incredible. He passed away too early in life. And I learned a lot from them over a 3.5-year period. And from that, I decided I wanted to travel out on my own, and I moved to California, worked with Arbitron Ratings for a little bit, that rate the radio station, Sammy Arbitron Ratings. And a friend of mine said that they were hiring at Lorimar Studio in their telecine department. And I went in there and I applied, and they hired me. And I worked in the telecine area where all the people such as Madonna and the movie producers and stuff come in and actually create the music or create the actual visual effects for videos or movies.
Wow.
And I worked with them for about 1.5 years before I moved to Florida. And I decided when I left Lorimar Studios that I was going to try my best to pursue my music. And I had started writing again, and I loved to dance. I performed a lot dance-wise, but I was just a natural dancer. And I moved out to Miami, Florida, and things flourished from there for a little while in the 90s. And I was graced to meet, Joe Somian, who had just graduated from Boston School of Music. He was this incredible creator and producer, very young. And together we created 4 singles, 2 of them that were released. One was Because You're Good to Me. And that went on the dance market for a little bit. And I continued working with other artists there as well. Lenny Hamilton Jr. Was an incredible producer. We wrote some really great songs together. And Spirit Free was one of them, allowing yourself to be who you want to be, to dance and move. So this is how the process took. And everyone says I'm not a very good vocalist compared to other vocalists out there. I'm an average vocalist. But what I have is a package, which is creating the EDM that I work with, whether it's piano or guitar, and then writing the lyrics that actually represent how the music flows, and then singing and putting together what I need to do to create the song. And so I'm more or less an artist than anything else, because it's the package of creating. If I separated myself as a musician or a vocalist or an engineer or producer, I probably would have not succeeded as far as I had. I had to have the package of a little bit of everything.
I love the package. And actually, I have to brag on you because, and where this brings us to is you in Chicago from Florida, right? And then, yes. And then your producer doing some songs for you on a latest piece of work you were doing was my beautiful son, Levi, who's Chicago and New York. And he just loved working with you and told me you have a gift of writing lyrics. He was just blown away. And I'm sure that's why you've been able to see yourself as the package, right? Instead of separating yourself, as you just said, right?
Correct.
So we're going
Levi was amazing. I met him through an initial contact from his school. We met and I listened to what he had worked on. He was very nervous. I was very nervous. We were trying to create this piece together, and it was just great energy. And it's something that changed my life more than people will ever know. My husband here in Barcelona totally gets where I'm coming from when I say that Levi actually saved me in a lot of ways.
Oh, Oh, well, we're not going to start getting me emotional now, Roland.
No, we're not.
I know, but it's like, and that's how he felt about you and just couldn't wait for us to meet you. And so, and I want people to really, truly embrace. We're having this conversation today because when you're open to serendipity and to what the universe is allowing to happen in your life, you never know who you're going to meet and why, right? And
That's true.
Music has been what I love about hearing the journey from you is hearing it's been a part of your life, your entire life, and it's how you've manifested it. It's also a big part of what RolCof is willing to do today. And there's a part of his life and his journey that the music has been, this whole artistic package has been a big part of the healing process for you through some very dark times. And I just want to, I feel like we are sitting on the couch. We're just halfway across the world from each other. But I just know that there's people's lives that will be changed forever for the good because RolCof is willing to share that in the midst of all of this that looks so fabulous, right? Like people look at you and go, look at the limelight, look at the life you're living, it's sexy, it's glamorous, you're doing what you love. And yet what we all have, many of us, is some deep, dark places in our past that we've had to work through. And if it's okay with you, RolCof, I'd love to take us. I think the part that got me was when you shared that you've had correct me if I'm wrong, you've survived 2 suicide attempts, but what came out of that was healing for you from some very dark past. So will you take us through what was the most pivotal part for you in realizing some of the healing that you had to do?
The process for me, the awakening for me, was the last suicide attempt after confronting my father for a second time on sexual child abuse over myself and other family members. And you there?
Yes, I'm here. My eyes are closed as I'm listening. Yeah.
And I wanted to confront him, and it was very, very difficult on how to do this. I didn't realize that I was really in a deep depression for years prior to that. And something just snapped, and I drove down to see him in the middle of the night and talked with my aunts and uncles and tried to confront him. And of course he was not going to have that, and tried to have me arrested if I didn't leave the property. And I felt, to be completely honest, I felt unsafe, but I was not in fear. I just felt unsafe. I didn't know what was going to take place. I allowed my own energy to go forward. I found out later, after I got home through my sister, that they were trying to find a way to arrest me so that they could, change the story around instead of what the truth was. And that night, at that time, my partner was very worried for me, and he had a sleeping pill for him that he had gotten, and he said, "Take this; it's going to calm you down, and we can talk about things in the morning." And I said, "Just leave it on the counter; I'll take care of it, a little later." And I got up in the middle of the night and walked into the kitchen, and I saw the bottle and looked outside and was looking at the lake and said, "I don't want to live like this anymore. I can't deal with it, and I don't know how to deal with it, and I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed." I did some things in my life that I wasn't proud of as I was reviewing my life history, but I realized it was because of the way I was raised and the atmosphere that I was raised in and the dysfunctional part of life. And I just didn't know how to fix it anymore. And so I took the whole bottle of pills and went back to bed, hugged my partner, and I don't know what happened after that. All I remember is waking up 2 days later in a more or less mental institution, but that's what it was. And it turned everything upside down. But at the same time, it was freeing because I was allowed to communicate everything I wanted to say. And in the hospital, there I stayed for 7 weeks. I was diagnosed as clinically depressed, also with major depression and PTSD. And they said in order for me to even try to start to heal, I had to find a way to forgive myself and others. And I started on a daily basis while in the hospital, sometimes twice a day, session with my therapist and Dr. Teresa and Dr. Gaudiotti. I'll never forget what they've done for me. They were very compassionate, and it was a life-changing experience. I still felt the threat of my father, even being in this institution, because of his connections with the sheriff's department in the state of Alabama, and our family connections with the current attorney general. And they were all part of our family history because of their businesses and everything. And I was still terrified. But I worked through it for 7 weeks. I had some ups and downs with my husband now because he didn't know how to handle all this. He'd been trying to get me to get some help, 4 or 5 years before that. But I just didn't want to face it. And during my first suicide attempt, which was in 1993, my 2 sisters and I went to my father and directly had a conversation with him. And the only thing he said to us was, "Thank you for ruining my life." And I thought about that for a long time. How could you even think about it? How arrogant of you to think about that. And then before I left with my 2 sisters, we were leaving after the next day. And this was in 93. And he said, "I'm going to get some help. I'm really sorry for what I've done." And I recorded that conversation because I thought, it was a way to protect me and protect my sisters. And then, this is, of course, not more than 5 months after my mother died in October of 92, at a very young age from pancreatic cancer. So I was dealing with a lot of issues. And once I arrived back to Florida in 93, it wasn't more than 2 months later that him and my uncle called me and said he wasn't going to get help, that if I didn't keep my mouth shut, that they would send some people down to take care of me. And I felt threatened. And I went into a spin there. And that was my first suicide attempt. And when I went to my first therapist there in 93, this subject about sexual abuse from your parent and family members and friends within your family really still wasn't communicated as much as it is now. And it's very dysfunctional, Holly. It's a very dysfunctional way of thinking. It's almost like eating cereal with milk every day. It's part of what you do. Yeah. And it was 8 years of abuse. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And talking to the therapist in 1993, the first thing she said to me, "Well, you just have to let that go and move forward," because it wasn't communicated. And I thought, I'm not going to sit through this.
She said that to you? Your first therapist said?
The first therapist, when I communicated with her, I was separating from my then partner. We were going through a separation. I explained the reason why I tried to commit suicide. And I said, I had this meeting with my father and with my 2 sisters, and we were molested over a course of years. And I didn't know how, what I should do. And he said he was going to get help. And she says, "Well, what you need to do is you need to concentrate on yourself, get the help you need, but you just have to let that go." Because time had passed for the laws then. The time had already passed for me to do anything.
What do you mean by the laws had passed, RolCof? What do you mean by that?
The laws that were there were like a 5-year period or something. And I had already had a cousin of mine that was much older than my sisters, who was part of this chain of molesting. He had already served prison time for doing the same thing to his daughter. And these are not uneducated people. These are just people, I think, that probably were molested themselves.
Yeah.
That's what I found out later on in life through my current therapist out of Chicago, that usually it's just a traumatic thing that keeps continuing until you face it and you try to get help. And I would have really, honestly, tried my best to work with my father in 93 if he was going to get the help. But after that, I was fearful.
Yeah.
And I turned to a dark side. I did some things I'm not proud of. Another subject that's part of this is pornography is so rampant in the United States that my therapist and the people that study this said that it's worse than heroin. You become addicted to it.
Really?
And unless we do something about it, it's going to continue. That in their therapy sessions when they meet, this is one of the highest things on the priority next to heroin overdose or people that are on drugs, because it's very, very addictive, and our government in some processes don't control this. And it's so free on the internet, it's so free on everywhere that you want to go that it's uncontrollable. And the addiction became part of my life for a long time, and I was very embarrassed about it. But I came through, and in 2010, that second suicide attempt, after I had these great people working with me, understanding my pain, a lot of crying, a lot of emotional function, being fearful that people were there to take me out of there because of the connections. There were other things that took place that only my sister and a couple other people know about, including the therapist from the hospital. But it's a sealed record, but it was to protect me. And I looked at myself one day when I was they have a little bathroom in your room, and I looked at myself just with a toilet and a sink. And I looked at myself in the mirror in there, and I just said, I don't want this in my life. I can't handle this anymore. I want my life, and I want to be a good person. And I know that it was going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight. And I still go through changes today. It's not something that just disappears. And it is pardon for the phone, but it's connected. But it's it's a process that we have to go through in order to be to heal, and we'll never totally heal from the interior. And my great therapist, Ron Paycheck in Chicago, he deserves all the credit he can get. Oh. He worked with me after I got out of the hospital right away. The hospital sent me to some organizations, and I couldn't afford, because I wasn't working at that time. I was so depressed I couldn't find what I was going to do. And he worked with my budget, and he saw me twice a week for the first year. And there were days that I just laid on the couch and cried, and there were days that I communicated. And by the second year, we started working on the process of how I can package these things up that were very painful. And as he said, we're going to pack them up. We're going to put them on a ship, an imaginary ship, and push them out to shore. They're never going to leave. You'll probably see them on the line. They're going to come back in close enough sometimes to hurt you, but they won't have control over you anymore. And you're going to fall, and you're going to get back up again, and you're going to fall, and you're going to get back up again. And that was the process that I went through with him for 4 years of therapy. And that was one of the reasons my husband had already moved to Barcelona in 2012 to take care of his mother. And one of the agreements is that I wanted to stay and continue my therapy until I felt ready. And that was into 2014. So I stayed on my own, Cost me a lot of money, Holly.
Oh,
It was the best money I ever spent. And it was, I would have probably paid $1,000 an hour if I knew that I was going to get that help. I still drop sometimes, as we call it. I fall back and I have to pick myself back up some days. Even being here in this beautiful city with the beautiful people around me and all the people that I communicate with, there are days that sometimes I stay in bed, 6 to 8 hours because I've had a rough night's sleep or something has happened that triggered. And I've learned that I need that. And then I get back up and I keep going. And that's what happens when you're clinically depressed. These little drops, and it's almost like a blood sugar drop. And it drops and you have to relax, get back up and keep going. And I've faced some really big challenges that only a few people know about, outside of the sexual abuse. And I faced it without any fear, Holly. And it is, if I can tell anybody anything, and if I can help anybody, is don't have fear, even if you've done something wrong that you felt that you could have changed during that abuse or during that situation, or you blame yourself because you allowed it to happen. It's okay, because that's being human.
Yes.
You make mistakes, you apologize, you face the people that you've made those mistakes with, and you keep going. But what you cannot go forward is fear, because it's destructive.
It's a poison, and it manifests, doesn't it? And it just psychologically, emotionally, in every way, it just slowly becomes a toxin in your body. And honestly, RolCof, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking, whatever the bigger plan was for your life, you were to survive. You were not only to survive, you were to thrive, because your courage to be able to talk about this, which I know has been extremely limited and only with therapists and with immediate family. And I think I was looking at some of the stats of, you made an interesting point going back to your very first therapist, right, in the early 90s. And we were not talking about the sexual abuse, especially at the hands of the people that are supposed to be the most trusted, right? Like our parents, our loved ones. It's hard for somebody out there, if you haven't had that experience or you haven't been touched by it, it's startling how many people have been. And yet it was shunned and you didn't talk about it. So when you think about where we've come as a society, and by the way, and just going back to that moment, what the bravery and the courage, and to embrace that fear, to get in your car and drive all the way back down to confront your father, the man that has done this to you for years. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't just him. He was sharing you with your uncle and who knows who else, and your sisters, right?
With my friend. He was sharing me with his friend, Nathaniel Alexander, who's dead now. And it's just a quick glimpse of my life. I had a happy life. My parents separated when I was in 1968, when I was 3 years old. I lived with my grandparents for 1 year while my mother got on her feet. She brought us back to Chicago, raised her kids, married a good man who treated us very well. And I didn't even know who my father really was at that time. And out of nowhere, in 1973, he comes and takes me supposedly for a month in the summer of 1973 when I was 8.5 years old. Didn't know who he was. Sat in the backseat of this huge car, watching him and my uncle communicating in a language, because it's from the South, in a language that was, like foreign to me. And I didn't see my mother again for 2.5 years.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah. So when I was taken, I was supposed to be taken because my mom was going after him for child support. And what happened is he made a deal. I'll come get the kids for the summer. And she said, you can take me. So he took me. I didn't know anything about it. And it was like right before I was supposed to go back, there was this conversation, and he said, I'm not taking him back. And I didn't see my mother for 2.5 years until Christmas of 1975. And by that time, I was already brainwashed. Things had already happened right away by the time I got down there. And I was too afraid to tell anybody. How do you tell somebody this? And my mother thought it was best for me, since I was a male, that I would be around him. And I had some stepbrothers. And my sister came down to live for a short period of time. That's when her abuse continued. And then she left. And it's very dysfunctional, and people don't understand. When I say it's like having cereal with milk, that's what my life was like. You don't equate it as, oh my God, something in this milk or in the cereal isn't good. You just eat it.
Yeah.
And that's what that type of abuse at a young age continues, that you just think this is part of life.
It was your norm. It was your norm, wasn't it?
Well, and my therapist said to me, it's called, you shut off one part of your brain as it's happening. And I never thought about that, but really I did detach myself. Even though I was in the situation, I detached myself because it was the only way to survive. You go to school and I became very introvert at that time. Even when I first went back to Chicago at 16 years old, I knew that I was not going back home. I left a car. My father thought these things were going to control me the rest of my life, but I left everything. I had one suitcase and a couple pairs of clothes, and that was it. And I had the initiative to say, I'm not going back. And anytime he called the house, I would shake from the inside out, literally shake from the inside out, because I had so much fear of him. He made me fearful. And I always remember his words, boy, keep your goddamn mouth shut. Sorry for the words, Holly, but
it's okay.
Those are the
That's
words
real.
that were said to me.
You were threatened. You were threatened to keep your mouth shut. Threatened.
Right.
Did you ever tell your mother? Did you ever have a chance to tell her?
That is one thing I almost did at the age of 21. My mom had held all these letters that she had sent me that were returned. And she waited until I was 21 years old to hand them to me. Because I said, I felt like you just left me. And I was very angry with my mom. And she said I didn't. But my mother, I realized, lived in fear as well, Holly. It was in the 1970s. You're a divorced woman, married to another person. She couldn't even get a loan at a bank, and she owned her own business.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
So you have to look at the reality of things when it's not, 2017. This is 1973 when women couldn't even get a loan at a bank.
Yeah.
And so she lived in fear. But she said at 21, I was having this conversation and started to go into it, and she got a phone call. And I just stopped. But the thing was that she had saved an envelope with all these letters that she had written me. And I said, why did you wait until I was 21 to give them to me? And she said, I felt like you're an adult and you would understand it more than if I would have given it to you when you were 16. And I'm grateful that I am alive today.
Yes.
7 years ago, 10 years ago, it wouldn't have affected me one way or another. I've been like, just, take me now. Let me just jump off the 10th floor. Those are things that went through my brain. And the dysfunction between myself and other family members that were abused as well. You have to face those things and say, why couldn't I stop it? And you can't.
No, and
you can't even stop it as an adult. It's there.
It's there, and yet you can't keep putting yourself in a place in your mind thinking, I have to to make yourself feel that you are this superhero, that you can stop it, right? Instead, you had to learn how to move through it. And like you were saying earlier, the fear, not letting it become a complete toxin to you. And it took some really good, amazing people. And, it sounds like you just had an amazing trip and you got to see some family, your sister, your aunt, people that really love and adore you. And I think, as I'm thinking about anybody listening to this, RolCof, and for one, just again, the courage to be able to say, okay, this is who I am and the crap I've been through. And yet you're choosing to thrive. And I really want to say that that's what's coming to me so strongly. You are here on this planet because you're choosing to thrive and you didn't let it get the best of you. It's a daily, right? Some days you lay in bed, you get up and you keep on moving. That's what we need to take away from this. But I would love for you, I have two things. This is coming strongly to me. For anybody listening that is a young person or maybe young adult that has lived this and they have never told a soul. I know you're not the therapist, RolCof, but what advice, what guidance, what wisdom could you give to somebody? Maybe they are a 40-year-old adult that's never talked about this and dealing with their own demons, right? Falling into alcoholism or drug abuse or pornography or all the different things we as human beings do to cope, right? They're coping mechanisms.
Right.
We're not consciously aware of it. We're just doing it to anesthetize ourselves from the pain. Right. What advice would you give to that person? I'd like to start there.
Love yourself, number one, and understand that no matter the great, when you're looking at the entire picture and you're saying, oh my God, I could never talk about this, just understand that this probably happened to that person standing and that did this, that never understood or didn't get the help. I truly believe through my therapist and I believe through other information that I've read that it is a cycle. And if you don't stop the cycle somehow, it's going to continue. And either you're going to be part of it or you're going to fall into drugs, alcohol, or pornography or something else that's going to help you cope with life. But my first thing is to say, you have to love yourself enough to say, I've got to talk to someone, whether it's a minister, whether it is a therapist, whether it's another family member, whether it's your husband or your wife or your partner, someone that is calm, that will understand where you're coming from and help you find your courage to go to the next step. But the most important thing that happened to me was my husband telling me, you need help. You're going to stay in the hospital. I'm signing off on this until you get the help you need and get the courage to stand up and face this. And he did. And he walked away from me saying, this is what we're going to do. And he said, either you sign the paper that you're going to stay committed to help yourself, or I can't go through worrying about you. Are you going to be awake the next day? And I realized those 7 weeks with some of the best, I have to give credit to those that work in this industry. They really do care. They're overwhelmed with not enough funds, but they really do care about what they're doing in their job. And I have to give credit to them because they helped me on my journey to get to the next step and the next step. Don't live in fear. Don't live it with embarrassment because there's nothing to be embarrassed about. And maybe you're never going to be able to confront the person that did this. Maybe they've passed on, whatever. But you have to talk about it openly, or it's going to internally eat you alive.
And it will get the best of you, and you may not be alive, right? This is what happens. Right. And the positive thing of this, Holly, because I want to keep it very positive. You and I talked about this. Is don't give up on yourself. Wherever you are emotionally, my eyes are filling with tears now. Don't give up on yourself. Don't allow anybody to hold you back. Don't be fearful of people
that have power try to use that power over you, whether it's authorities or whether it's the people that work with authorities or whether it's a parent or a friend, a husband, a wife. It goes both ways. Mm-hmm. You stand your ground, don't live in fear, love yourself, and find one person, just one person that you can talk to honestly and openly. And that will help you, number one, get it out in the open. And you're not internalizing the destruction inside you any longer.
And you know what I love? The one person. Honestly, RolCof, if I truly, I'm 100% with you right now, because you've got to talk about it. But that one person that you trust in our lifetime, you can't tell me there isn't one person that you trust, that you know loves you for who you are, right? Talk to that person. Find that one person, because all of that's sitting there and harboring, like we keep saying, it will come out. And it might even come out like venom, right? You finally get to unleash it. And I have to give huge love and kudos to your amazing husband. I can't wait to meet him someday, because what he did was not easy. That was the highest level of tough love, because he loves you so damn much that he wasn't right. And for him, we talk about tough love and a lot of different things, but that's the essence of, no wonder you're like, this is the man of my life, the man of my dreams, and the person that's your soulmate. And, but I love that you just, so I'm going to ask you though, this is burning in my heart, because there's people that are going to be listening to this, again, all over the world, all ages. Tell us, if you know that somebody's listening to this and they are the person, and I hate to use the word the perpetrator, but the person that's actually doing the harm, what could you tell them? What advice could you give them? What could you say? Because I truly believe what you also said, RolCof, is that it's very generational. And I'm not saying that that's an excuse. By no means is that as an excuse of behavior, right? But it's very generational. Like you said, it's very cyclical. Cycles, the next. But what could you say to somebody that's listening that is battling that demon, that they are the person that's causing this harm? I don't even know what you'd say to them.
This is what I'm going to say. During that cycle of childhood experience, there was things that happened with me and other family members that, were around my age. That was part of this whole thing that my father and his friend were involved in. And I realized that now, I realized it, when I was talking with my therapist, but I realized now that that person that's doing that, even myself, I felt guilty for having, these sexual relationships with other people of my age group, while in the midst of my father and his friend being around. And I had to sit and write letters to them and told them, this wasn't me. This was our life. And I apologize to you. It was very painful for me, Holly, because it was so incestual of family and cousins and friends, that I had a lot to digest. And I'm not talking 1, 2, 3 people. I'm talking, I had people that were older than I was, that were cousins, that were doing the same thing with me, because it was all part of this group of incestual process. And I say to the person, including myself, you have to face it, talk with the person that you're with, say you're sorry, the first thing, and then say, what can we do to fix this? Those are the things that I wanted to hear from my father. And he said he was sorry just to get us out of the state. But once we left, it was like all protection around him came in. And you have to mean it. And whether it's in writing, whether it's in person, say you're sorry, and that, what is it that we can do to fix this? And please forgive me. Because I'm learning that part, Holly, is to forgive. That is the hardest thing to do. I've forgiven all the other people that were involved, but I haven't forgiven my father, and I'm still working on that. It is a process, but you have to forgive in order to heal.
Oh,
And that I'm still doing.
God love you, because I just read something. I love to read and absorb about like forgiveness. And, RolCof, I read something the other day that was so simple and yet so profound, that forgiveness is for you. It's the gift you give yourself to let go of the pain and the damage. It's not letting the other person off the hook. It's letting you off the hook from carrying around this weight and this illness inside you. And I thought, wow, that's forgiveness, right? Because there's so many different ways to look at it, right? And it's a process depending on, and I love what you just said, because if there's somebody that's listening to this and you are that living in it and you're the one acting it out, own it. Start with saying you are sorry, but I love how you said, but mean it, own it. And, we'll never really know. I want to celebrate you, RolCof, because you're thriving. And what's beautiful, and I want people to get to hear your music. Your music is so incredible because so much of it, and now it all makes sense. A lot of your songs have so much to do with the freedom of who you are and the healing of who you've become and this amazing, magnificent human being that you are today. And, when I think about some of the cool things you've been doing recently, let's celebrate. Like, tell us something amazing that you're most proud of recently. I saw some things, but I want to hear it from you. You've done some pretty kick-ass shit. Sorry, I had to say that.
Well, for the last 6 or so months, we've been focusing on family. And that I've walked away from my music just a little bit. But I will say that last year, when I arrived in Barcelona, being, gay, and I've been with Alberto for 16 years. We were allowed to get married in the United States finally. And here in Barcelona, we're married and under the laws of Spain, because he's a Spanish, him and his parents are from Spain. And so it allowed me to be free. And one of the things that I wrote was Barcelona, Feel Our Love. And it came out of nowhere. The Gay Pride in 2014-15 were coming around. And I said, I wrote this song, Barcelona, Feel Our Love. No matter who you are, trans, gay, straight, or bi, whoever you are, feel the love of Barcelona, being free, being open. And so that song allowed me a lot of performances. The Festi Gay, which is a huge performance of many different people here in Barcelona. I was able to be the closing act for that. I was very proud of that.
So cool.
Last year, I was on the first float for Gay Pride Parade with an incredible DJ. And my dear friend who does a lot of drag shows, the Carla Show, we really enjoyed it together, and I was able to perform during the Gay Pride, Barcelona, Feel Our Love, and Let Me Be By Myself, which Levi constructed with me and wrote and produced.
Oh,
and
awesome.
And then lately I've just been, creating a lot of music internally, meaning that it's in my small studio space here, and I'm working with other people on the outside. And I've just in the last, since January, I've created and composed 27 songs completed. And we're all determining them, having family and friends circle which ones they like to see which one I should go in the studio and complete. One of the songs that I sent to you, of course, today had to deal with the pain that I had, and it is Wash Away All the Pain I Know. A very simple ballad with, the piano keys. It took me 35, 40 minutes to write the song from start to finish. And this is what I do. And so my goal is to put an entire show together, because I am on Spotify, I am on iTunes, Amazon.com, anything you can think with my music.
Yep, I love it.
But you make no money off of it. you have to go out and perform.
Yeah.
And for the last 6 months, besides working in my private studio here and creating music, we've been taking care of Roberto's mother, who's going to be 90 this year. And she had some health issues over the last year. And so I took some time away from that to take care of that and take care of me and take care of Roberto. But I did not stop creating. Like I said, since January, I have 27 new songs, which tops me at about 260 songs composed. Love writing for other people. If there's some great artists out there that can sing, that want to hear some of my music, genres go from, pop dance to, country, send me an email and I'll send you some music and, tell me what you think. And if I think we can collaborate together, bring you down and have you sing some of my music and try to help you as well get out there.
I love it.
So I'm working on different fields. Yeah. With music, even at this ripe old age I am.
Well, now remember, we're about the same age, RolCof. So, it is ripe. I'm going to call it ripe and fabulous, right? I'm loving it.
See. I'm proud of where I am today, and every day is a new day.
I love it. And you should be. And you know what? As I'm listening to you, do you see there's something really cool. I'm getting the goosies, RolCof, as I'm saying this, because as I'm listening to you, do you see I don't want people to miss this. There's like an influx of creativity at your highest level of your gifts have been able to come to the surface in ways that maybe would have never manifested had you not come through this incredible healing process. Right? The more you've let go of the toxins and embraced your amazing gifts in your life, it sounds to me like the songs are just coming to you left and right? It's like the flow. You're in the flow. Right?
It helps when you're releasing something. And if you're an artist, whether you're a painter or whether you write in terms of a novel or you're a composer, a singer, as an artist, or someone that's doing what you do, Holly, by communicating and allowing people to use your connections to get their information out. When you're free, the energy comes through. Mm-hmm. A long time ago, most of my music was all dance music. I only wanted to talk about dancing and having fun and that type of thing. Lately, the last year and a half, my music has been more mellow and stronger lyrics than I've ever written before, and they just flow out of my head. And that is correct. Being free allows you to freely be creative.
It's like your spirit soaring. Your soul and your spirit are just soaring, and you can feel it coming through the phone. But just listening to you talking about all these songs that are coming to you, that's the gift that you're able to give back to life because you've chosen to live this life. And RolCof, I just wish we were sitting on the couch because I am hugging you through the phone. I love you. I'm so grateful that you're in our life, that our families are connected, and it's just still lingering with me. But you mentioned something towards the beginning, and you said that Levi saved your life back in Chicago. And I don't know if you've ever told him that, but when it's time and when it's right, whatever that story is, he's high EQ and highly humble, but I know that you two have a very special relationship. So whatever that is, I know when it's time you'll tell him. So thank you.
I've tried. Thank you so much, and we will communicate. He's a special gift to the world, and of course that is, I believe, part of his parenting, and you are the person that gives this energy out, and that energy flows through your children. And that's something that I have to say, I have so much respect for you on that end.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We are blessed to have you in our life. And okay, so what I'd love to do, just in celebrating you and celebrating just this entire, we've been together for almost an hour. If people, and I know people will want to, if they would like to reach out to you to learn more about your music, all the gifts you have going there, or to learn more in confidence, maybe they heard something that's triggered something that they would like to ask you a question. How, out of respect for you, RolCof, how best for people to reach out to you?
The best thing is through RolCof at iCloud.com. And, just put in the title, conversation, or, from your site or whatever. That way it doesn't go into spam.
Okay.
And they can communicate with me and on any subject, whether it is talking about their situation or whether they wanted to know more about my music or collaborate. I'm a very open person, have been for about the last 7 years, and as much as I possibly can. And I will definitely communicate back with you. It may take me some time, but I will definitely get back to every single person that communicates.
I love that. And just because I want to make sure people heard it, it's ROL, RolCof, COF, and and iCloud.com, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Beautiful. And we will have all of this in the blog that will go along with the artwork when we publish this. And I am I am honored. I feel privileged that we are connected across the miles and that you are part of our life. I feel like you're my brother from another mother. And I just love you. Give your honey our love. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for the gift of you. This world needs you.
Holly, thank you so much. And thank you for the great energy and actual support. And God bless you and the world.
Oh, thank you, love. Have an amazing rest of the evening for you. Day for me.
You too. Day for you.
Thank you for joining me for another awesome celebration of you. If you were inspired by this story, please share it with your family and friends and hashtag Your Story Matters. I'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment on iTunes. And absolutely, please come to my website, hollydowling.com. Leave a comment there too, and while you're there, pick up your free gift. Most importantly, though, just remember that your life is a gift from God. What you do with it is your gift back.